Hey guys, Jesse Miller with Midtown Video here, answering the question on everybody's mind, what camera should I buy? Today we're doing a very special under $10,000 edition of our segment, and we're going to pit the Sony NEX FS700 against the Canon C100. Now both of these cameras, as I mentioned earlier, can be obtained for under $10,000 and will satisfy different needs. So let's take a look at the two of them and see what camera should you buy. Now, both of these cameras have a super 35mm sensor, which means you can use all of your fancy glass and achieve a super shallow depth of field to get extremely cinematic looking images out of your video cameras. Both of these sensors are also 4K resolution, even though both cameras only record internally at 1920 by 1080. We'll find later, however, that the NEX FS700 can in fact output a full 4K resolution. In order to focus the light on your brand new super 35mm sensor, you're going to need lenses. And as you would expect, Canon C100 comes with an EF mount, so that you can utilize all of your Canon EF mount cinema primes, or more likely, your DSLR zooms, 24-70, 70-200, or the less expensive 24-105. But what about Sony's NEX FS700? That's got Sony's E-mount, which has an admittedly smaller selection, including the stock lens, which is 18-200 with a 3.5 to 5.6 f-stop. However, what if you wanted to utilize all of your Canon lenses on this badass NEX FS700 camera? No problem. First, you'll need a Metabones adapter. They have their smart adapter, which allows for electronic control of the Canon iris right on the 700. But if you wanted to go one better, you could get Metabones' Speed Booster, which in addition to electronic control of the iris, gives you an entire additional f-stop over and above the rating of the lens. Pretty awesome. One more check in the W column for the NEX FS700. There is actually a motorized zoom lens available for under $1,200. Reality television guys, I'm talking to you. NEX FS700 plus servo zoom lens equals totally awesome. When it comes to codec, it's pretty much a toss-up. Both cameras record in the AVC HD codec, which is the 420 color space. Sony's got the advantage because they can record in the PH version of the codec at 28 megabits per second. The C100 can only go up to FX at 24 megabits per second. However, the Sony only has one SDHC card slot, where the Canon C100 has two SDHC card slots. This means you can either do relay recording, where you fill up one card and automatically start recording on the next, or duplicate recording, so that you hit record once but get two copies of your shooting, which is an automatic backup. Pretty awesome. All right, let's talk inputs and outputs. When it comes to audio, if you're going to use a professional camcorder, you better have XLR inputs. Both of these cameras have two XLR inputs. Now, on the Sony, they're placed a little bit awkwardly on the front and on the back. On the Canon C100, they're awkwardly attached to a removable handle attachment that requires an additional cable to connect to the camera. So they're both a little bit weird, but at least they've got two XLR inputs, line level, and mic plus 48. What about outputs? Now the C100 has HDMI output, which is rumored to put out uncompressed, but definitely puts out 422 color space, 8-bit high definition 1920 by 1080. On the other hand, the Sony NEX FS700 sees its HDMI output and raises it a locking connector hd-sdi output, which is absolutely necessary if you want to connect safely to a monitor or a switcher and not have to worry about somebody bumping the cable and having it fall out of the connection. hd-sdi is almost worth the additional price of admission on the Sony NEX FS700. But to go even further, Sony has an update available in June which will allow you to take full 4K resolution out of its HDMI output of the camera. The C100 will only record internally and output externally at a maximum 1920 by 1080 resolution. Let's talk viewfinders. Now on the Canon C100, there's actually a proper eyepiece for you to use in addition to the LCD viewfinder. On the Sony NEX FS700, the way they deal with it is adding an eye tube just attaching on top of the LCD viewfinder. Additionally on the 700, because the LCD viewfinder is on the back top of the camera, it makes it a little bit difficult to view when you're shoulder mounted or trying to get an aerial view from up high looking down into a crowd. You can't really see the viewfinder. On the C100 side of things, you've got a lot more flexibility with the placement of the LCD viewfinder. However, it's still kind of tough to use it for critical focus. if you're going to be using super shallow depth of field kind of stuff, where your subjects are going to be moving closer and further from the camera, we always recommend an external monitor with peaking. To round out the necessary professional feature set, you should note that both the C100 and the FS700 have a built-in ND filter wheel. And this is actual glass that rotates in front of the lens, not merely an electronic approximation. One area where the FS700 clearly has an advantage is slow motion. If you left the resolution at the true 1920 by 1080, you can crank the frame rate all the way up to 240 frames per second. If you're willing to sacrifice a little resolution, you can crank it up to 480 frames per second. You wonder how the 480 frames per second slow-mo looks? Check out this awesome cat video. So I mentioned this was our sub $10,000 edition of our What Camera Should I Buy segment. So here's the pricing. Without a lens, the Sony NEX FS700, $74.99. Currently, Canon has a promotion for the C100 without a lens at $54.99. Both Sony and Canon are currently offering 0% financing options, so call your buddies at Midtown Video, jump on this right away before that promotion ends. Finally, let's give us an answer to what camera should you buy. If you need a locking hd-sdi connector, a capability for a zoom lens, and the possibility for 4K output in the future, I highly recommend Sony's NEX FS700. If, on the other hand, you need native operation with your Canon EF glass and the ability to get in and out of places to look like you're just using a DSLR, maybe you've got to shoot incognito, you're better off with a C100. Thanks very much for watching. This has been Jesse Miller from Midtown Video answering what camera should you buy?